speaker. Roddy Scheer is a journalist and photographer specializing in environmental issues, the outdoors, and travel. When he is not out in the field taking pictures, Roddy runs earthtalk.org, a weekly environmental newsletter that is syndicated to 1,100 media outlets and reaches 6 million readers. He has served as a regular contributor to the Environmental Magazine, Seattle Magazine, Northwest Travel, American Photo, Wildflower, and others. And he is a 3-time Society of Professional Journalists Excellence in Journalism winner. Roddy has a wonderful presentation prepared for us tonight, all about his new book, Oregon and Washington's Roadside Ecology. This is really my favorite kind of book. I was able to get to know Seattle through books like David B. Williams' Seattle Walks, my favorite urban guide to the city, and Roddy's book is a perfect companion for travelers in the Pacific Northwest. Please join me in welcoming Roddy Scheer to the podium.
Thank you, Spencer. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Let's see. All right. I was at the Ravenna store back in 2015 presenting my Hiking Washington Waterfalls book. And it's nice to be back here now. I feel like I got called up to the big time tonight. So tonight we're here to talk about my new book, Oregon and Washington's Roadside Ecology. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about how the idea for the book came to be and what the process was like for putting it together, and then I'll answer any questions you might have. So the concept is basically borrowed from Mountain Press's Roadside Geology series, which was is a series of geology guidebooks that started in the 70s. They have one for just about every state now. And a lot of people like me keep one in their glove compartment in their car, and when you're driving around somewhere, you can check out what's along the way and read about some geological feature or curiosity, along whatever highway you're on or whatever. So that was the impetus for the idea for this book, which is Roadside Ecology. Timber Press, which is a Portland, Oregon-based publisher that does a lot of natural history. They were consulting with one of their long-standing authors, Tom Wessels, who's an ecologist from New Hampshire, and he suggested doing Roadside Ecology of New England. So that book, he did that for them. He wrote it, and that came out in September 2021. And then in the meantime, Timber wanted to start fleshing out the series and hired me to handle the Oregon and Washington version of the book. So it was a job that I didn't have to think twice about accepting. As I told my wife, anytime anyone offers to pay you to hike, you say yes. And this book for me was really kind of a dream, because previous guidebooks I had done were more just about hiking, like, take a right at the big rock and go left at the tree. Whereas this one, I can go into a lot of detail about the ecology of the given hikes, and they're all short and easy. So that's good for me too. So anyway, I covered 18 states. I researched and picked about 18 hikes in Washington to cover, and then I did 15 in Oregon, and they're all meant to kind of introduce the reader to different kinds of ecosystems around the region, and to showcase the different kinds of ecosystems that we have here. And it's pretty diverse, given that it doesn't necessarily seem that way when we're all just used to looking at Douglas fir trees everywhere, but there is a lot more. So just a note that when I was doing the Oregon research part, it was the summer of 2020, and there were all these were wildfires that I had to basically dodge, and I actually couldn't do some of the hikes because of them and had to come back, and it was, crazy global warming induced times. So anyway, a few of the hikes are well known, but most of them tend to be more obscure and off the beaten path, although none of them stray too far from the road. And that's kind of the idea, that all the hikes are supposed to be 2 miles or less and really easy, like anyone can do them. They're not all handicapped accessible, but some of them are. And the idea is anyone can get out and learn something and have a nice leg stretch. So anyway, if you hiked all the trails in the book, you'll have covered ground managed by the BLM, the Forest Service, the Park Service, Washington State Parks, Oregon State Parks, not to mention a few tribal entities, municipal jurisdictions, and the Nature Conservancy. So that's one nice thing about it, is that you don't have to go to a national park to experience the nature and ecological relationships of the Northwest. They're kind of all almost at our doorstep. So one example of a short off the beaten path hike not far from here that you probably never heard of is the Traditional Knowledge Trail, which is on the Snoqualmie Indians' land. Has anyone been there? No. Anyway, it's a half-mile hike. In my chapter of the book, I detail how ancient indigenous uses of native plants are still flourishing there. And it's kind of this little forlorn gully between a residential neighborhood and the Snoqualmie Casino. So it's a weird spot, but when you get there, you get immersed in the forest. And I thought I would read a little bit from that chapter just to give you a taste of the detail of the book and what you would learn. So let's see. Make your way through the gauntlet of the overgrown trail as it winds its way down into a little creek valley. Western beaked hazelnut trees in round-topped thickets spread their leggy branches and dark green leaves far and wide throughout the forest, dropping tasty filberts, also known as hazelnuts, and beloved not only by humans but also seed-eating birds such as woodpeckers and jays in the early fall. These nuts were a staple food for the Snoqualmies, who kept them in huge pits by the cooking fire for easy snacking access. One of the filbert's main floral competitors in the understory is salmonberry, which grows to a similar height, about 12 feet tall, and spreads out into sinewy thickets. Salmonberry's alternating dark green leaves are made up of sharply toothed leaflets, and in late spring, its prized yellow-pink salmon-colored berries start to pop out, attracting not only humans but bears, birds, and other lovers of nature's treats. According to Snoqualmie lore, Swainson's thrush, a small migratory songbird that breeds in northern latitudes but migrates through the Pacific Northwest, sings the salmonberry's ripe when it shows up each May on its way north for the summer breeding season. So, let's see. So a little closer to here even, there's something that any of us can access by car, bike, or bus. That's the recently recreated naturalistic wetlands at Magnuson Park, which was done, I think, in 2009. This is a kind of an oasis in the middle of the park where the Seattle Parks and some other agencies combined to take the former concrete of the naval base and turn it into this really amazing small ecosystem. And there's about a dozen different species of waterfowl, like this pied-billed grebe there, as well as songbirds, hummingbirds, herons, and quail. Pacific chorus frogs returned to this area basically because of this small little place. It's perfect habitat for them. And it's a great thing that now any of us can zigzag our way through there and check out this age-old yet brand new ecosystem that's functioning just as nature intended. So let's see. A couple of the sites aren't far from Portland, likewise, such as Erratic Rock, which is where an ancient minivan-sized argillite boulder landed after traveling about 800 miles down the Columbia Gorge on the back of a glacier when the Missoula ice dam collapsed, and it was at the end of the last ice age, and it sent tidal waves after tidal waves of water towards the Pacific, carrying big ice chunks on it, and then the ice melted, and the glacial erratic, the rocks, land there, and they could be anywhere. So this one was 800 miles from where it started, they think. Let's see. Since then, this otherwise solitary rock has become the center of a small willow lichens, fungi, and plants that are able to capitalize on its new geographic, substrate and setting that's kind of out of the ordinary in the Willamette Valley where it ended up. You'll see these kind of glacial erratics all over the Northwest. So now you know what to look for, like a big rock that looks out of place, you'll know what that is, and look for them in forests and plains and everywhere you go. I visited a bunch of national wildlife refuges for the book also, all searching for the perfect short trails. One of them was the Billy Frank National Wildlife Refuge near Olympia, where you can wander the boardwalk and check out all kinds of waterfowl and raptors and interesting plants. And it's, on these tidal marshes. So let me read another little part from the book on that. Let's see. Along the edges of the boardwalk, cayenne red sprigs of red osier dogwood spread out widely in the riparian landscape. This fast-growing, drought-tolerant native deciduous shrub is an excellent soil stabilizer. Look for it along the banks in riparian zones like this one, where it helps keep the land from eroding into the river. In springtime, this dogwood sprouts delicate, creamy white flowers that pollinators love. Another environmental service performed by red osier dogwood is nitrogen fixing. All plants use nitrogen from the soil as a fertilizer to produce chlorophyll, the green pigment that traps light energy from the sun. Chlorophyll, in turn, is an essential component in photosynthesis, the process by which plants combine water and atmospheric carbon dioxide to produce their own food, the sugars essential to their survival and growth. Most plants are purely takers when it comes to nitrogen, but a select few, alders, lupins, dogwoods, and others, convert atmospheric nitrogen into a terrestrial form, ammonia, that other nearby plants can make use of as natural fertilizer. This is accomplished through a symbiotic relationship with bacterial partners. So, again, that's just an example of the kind of details that are in here, as opposed to just simple hiking guides. So I checked out several state parks, each of them with unique ecological communities of their own. Like this one, Steptoe Butte, out in the Palouse in eastern Washington. It has these amazing rocky, lichen-encrusted rocks and bird's eye view of otherworldly rolling hills of the Palouse. That was a fun one. Deception Pass State Park, where the ocean currents mingle with the inland waters and all kinds of cool creatures come in and check it out. Like this harbor seal. A few of the hikes are in national parks on well-known trails, and I included them to showcase particular ecological features there and as jumping off points for further exploration. This is the Clay Lock out on the Olympic Peninsula here. Another example is the Nisqually Vista Trail at Mount Rainier, which is a short paved trail through a beautiful subalpine fir forest leading to an overlook of the shrinking Nisqually Glacier on the south flanking face of Rainier. This is a short half-mile trail. Anyone can make it. There's a slight elevation gain, and it gets you out into the forest among the trees and berries and wildflowers and wildlife. And you can read all about it in this chapter. But beyond all those details, little details about the ecological relationships there, I'll often in the different chapters go into, go a little deeper as to larger issues like global warming. And on the Nisqually Vista Trail, for instance, I discussed the life cycle of the subalpine firs, which is the dominant tree there, and what makes them tick biologically, reproductively, evolutionarily, and then climate change is kind of the big thing. An obvious example here is at this Nisqually Vista Trail that ends up with a view of this glacier that's been shrinking. The glaciers, as you guys probably all know, they're key drivers that drive the whole hydrology of the Northwest. They nourish the downstream valleys, and the trickle of melt-off, is key to everything from our water supplies and agriculture to hydroelectric power, which 2/3 of our power comes from in the Northwest. So we need those glaciers to stay there, but they're melting. So this one, the Nisqually Glacier, has retreated about 1.5 miles since, which this photo shows, since the end of the Little Ice Age, which was in the mid 1800s. So since then, it's retreated drastically, and in 20 or 30 years, it might not be there at all. We'll see. So. And the effects of things like global warming are really kind of omnipresent throughout every aspect of the ecosystems. And I will read another example about the trees here. that Nisqually Vista Trail. Let's see. So as climate change exerts more and more pressure on ecosystems everywhere, subalpine firs are just one of the many tree species scrambling to maintain their territory. The temperature increases we have already experienced over the last few decades have pushed many of them higher into formerly wide open alpine meadows, displacing habitat for wildflowers and other herbaceous understory plants. Meanwhile, the trees are losing ground at lower elevations as things heat up. While this may seem like a fair trade, it's not. Given the fact that Mount Rainier is conical, there's more land available at lower elevations on and around its flanks than higher ones up around tree line. Another reason these firs are encroaching on Mount Rainier's meadows is the success of our fire suppression efforts over the last 100 years. These ecosystems burned periodically prior to Euro-American settlement. Many of the fires were sparked by lightning, others were intentionally set by indigenous peoples inhabiting the area for at least the last 13,000 years. They would burn the subalpine meadows if a lightning strike didn't do it for them, to boost berry harvests, herd game, improve sightlines for hunting, and clear their favorite trails. Whether set by lightning or man, these fires every few years curbed the establishment of seedlings in meadows and prevented upslope tree line creep. So basically our fire suppression has, interrupted that process, and now we get worse fires and lots of problems. So I thought I'd run through a few more of my favorite hikes in the book to whet your appetite for getting out there. And especially summer is approaching, and we're all looking forward to the good weather if it ever remains here. This shot is from the Trail of the Molten Land at Lava Lands outside of Bend, Oregon, which is an area I never really explored much because I've been really Washington focused in most of my time in the Northwest for 20 years. So getting to know parts of Oregon was a real treat for this book, and having an excuse to drive around all over and check it out. So this is one that was one of my favorites. That's an old. I thought that was a bristlecone pine tree, but they're Ponderosa pines that just grow in a unique way when they're in such a dry, desolate environment, and they grow more like bristlecone pines where they go around a center. So it's pretty cool. This one is the Rough and Ready Wayside in Southwest Oregon, which is for various reasons kind of has a huge variety of plants that don't necessarily otherwise exist in Southwest Oregon, and so you can come there and it was protected about 100 years ago because people were coming and stealing the plants and selling them because they were odd. So anyway, another one I loved, which I hadn't explored much before this book, was the dunes of Southern Oregon. This is Taconich Dunes, which is one of the few that they don't allow dune buggies on, so it's quieter and more peaceful, and you can hike out to the beach there. So that was pretty cool. Another one that was unique for me was the Islands in Time Trail at the John Day Fossil Beds in Northeast Oregon. There are all these crazy colors from various minerals in the soil and the effects of erosion. And another cool one is Dry Falls, which I had lived here for 15 years and never even heard of it, and I'd been to all other parks and stuff. But it's out in eastern Washington, and you can go walk around on that canyon floor and climb that fin if you want. And the sagebrush steppe landscape there is kind of really quintessential Intermountain West landscape that we don't see a lot of in west side of the Cascades. So it's really a completely another world, even though it's only 3-4 hours drive away. Anyway, that should give you a pretty good idea of what the book is about. And if you found any of those little details about any of the sites I mentioned at all interesting, you're a good candidate to try some of the other hikes in the book, or at least keep a copy in your glove compartment so that when you're out on a road trip, you can say, hey, we're driving right by that one, let's check it out. So I encourage you to do that. And in terms of what's next for me, after submitting the manuscript for the Oregon and Washington book, Timber Press quickly assigned me another book on Yellowstone National Park, Yellowstone and the Tetons, for Roadside Ecology. So last summer I was off for three or 4 weeks exploring Yellowstone and the Tetons, and finding every, you know, hike that was shorter than 2 miles that was easy to access, and that will come out in next, I guess, 2023. And so anyway, I'm looking forward to that, and that was really fun and a lot different, and it was great to get out of the Northwest and do something, you know, do something different. So yeah, so thanks for listening, and if you feel so inclined for buying the book, and I'll be signing some copies here, and otherwise I'll see you out there on the trail sometime, I hope. Thank you.